A geological phenomenon known as pole shift has been seized upon by those who believe the Mayan prophecies refer to a sudden and dramatic shift in the Earth's crust. In such a pole shift, the continents and the Earth's crust would slide over the planet's core, with catastrophic consequences.
Such an extremely rapid pole shift on the timescale of hours would be a catastrophe like we've never even thought of. A place like New York could get shifted towards the Arctic, end up completely covered in ice. And a place like Alaska might end up at the equator under the sun. And in the 50s, it was picked up by a professor named Charles Hapgood, who really developed the idea that pole shift had actually occurred recently and rapidly.
Charles Hapgood envisioned a devastating event that would literally turn our world upside down.
The pole shift theory is a complete disaster. It encompasses everything that scares us and involves the entire planet. A pole shift will cause earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. It will affect everyone on the planet equally.
At least 40 people have died in a furious storm that included tornadoes, flash floods and hail in the US states of Oklahoma, North Carolina and Virginia. North Carolina alone reported 62 tornadoes kicked up by the worst storm in more than 2 decades to hit the state.
It was just a massive, thick cloud with debris, all kinds of debris spiraling around it. There was pieces of all kinds of metal, boards, just a complete spiral.
Have you ever seen anything like that before?
First time I've ever seen one. First time I've ever heard one.
Authorities warned the toll was likely to rise further as rescuers are searching for victims and survivors in the debris. The storm has also caused massive damage of life and property in Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama and Georgia.
Global warming, shrinking ice caps, a planet in peril. Well, there's something else to worry about. Powerful telescopes are showing scientists that the sun is the dimmest it has been for nearly a century. The lack of activity means that there are fewer sunspots or solar flares than usual. But what seems unclear is why the lull is taking place or when the sun is likely to brighten up again. The BBC's Palab Ghosh has more on the images sparking the speculation.
If there's one constant in our world, it's the sun. But take a close-up look and it's a different picture.
This is an ultraviolet picture of the sun taken in 2001. Look at its boiling, turbulent atmosphere. And these bright areas are regions of solar flares. Now compare that to a picture taken just this week. Hardly any activity at all. It's the quietest that the sun has been for nearly 100 years.
In the late 17th century, a quiet spell lasted 70 years, which led to a mini-ice age. It's led some to suggest that a similar cooling might offset the impact of climate change now. But scientists say that this current minimum activity by the sun may well be short-lived.
The first point to make is the fact that we don't know when the solar minimum will disappear. When does the activity start coming back? It could be tomorrow, we have no idea. But secondly, if these are issues we have to sort out, we really have to sort them out now.
There's now evidence that the sun has been dimming since 1985, and that's not stopped the rise in global temperature caused by the burning of fossil fuel. So scientists think that the current quiet sun is unlikely to save us from global warming. Palab Ghosh, BBC News.
Despite the sun's quiet spell, some scientists are warning about the opposite, a very unquiet star. Solar storms have the potential to cut off power and seriously disrupt the many sources of technology that we've become to depend on. For more on the potential danger and what can be done to prepare, I spoke a brief time ago with Michio Kaku. He's the author of Physics of the Impossible. Professor Kaku, thanks for coming on the program again. Should we be scared of the sun?
Yes, every 11 years the sun throws a temper tantrum and unleashes a solar tsunami throughout outer space. In a worst-case scenario, I repeat, worst-case scenario, property damage could be over $1 trillion, power could be wiped out through most of the continents of the world, billions of dollars in property damage throughout many cities, and there could be food riots, collapse of what we call Western civilization may take place.
Hang on, Professor. Are you really trying to scare us here? I mean, is this seriously a possibility?
That's right. NASA and the scientists in this country are taking this very seriously. You see, we are very young in the space age, and every 11 years the sun flips the North Pole and the South Pole, releasing a burst of solar energy. So far, we've dodged the bullet, but we're very young in the space age. In 1859, all hell broke loose when we had telegraph wires. Telegraph wires were pretty much wiped out because of this gigantic solar storm 150 years ago. If something like that were to happen again, when we have hundreds of satellites, tremendous power grids around the world, it could cause untold havoc. And again, that's a worst-case scenario. We expect that in the year 2012, there could be more solar activity because that coincides with the next sunspot cycle. Yeah. Chances are nothing will happen, but we have to be prepared for a solar tsunami.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll start tonight, quite frankly. Is there anything we can do about this other than drinking ourselves into a stupor?
NASA scientists have laid out many things we can do. First of all, we should start to have backup systems, and our power grid should be reinforced to handle outages from outer space. In 1989, power in Canada was partially disrupted because of a solar storm that took place. Our satellites have to be reinforced, and we have to make sure that our communications network especially remain intact in case of a worst-case scenario. Now, the lesson of Katrina, for example, was that the inevitable inevitably happens. And we were unprepared for Katrina, though we knew it could happen. Now, NASA is aware of the fact. Reports are now being issued by many scientists saying that it's good to be prudent in case at some point in the future a worst-case scenario happens, like in 1859. We are well into the space age now, and now is the time to reinforce our satellites and power grid.
Okay, well, we'll have to end it there, but solar tsunamis is definitely something else for President Obama's in-tray. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Professor.
Thank you.
We're leaving.
Time is running out. Our world is about to end. That's the apocalyptic prediction from those who believe our impending doom was foreseen centuries ago. Now, alarming evidence is being uncovered around the world.
Oh my God. You can see where they're coming right out of the ice.
Are these the ominous signs that Armageddon could be upon us?
What if the Mayans are right? We would expect an absolutely spectacular catastrophe. It would affect every single person on every continent.
Did the Mayans record the 21st of December 2012 as our last day?
The Maya, they look at the future and they know that the end is coming.
A doomsday prophecy in an ancient Mayan codex speaks of floods, fiery rain, and devastation. Some say the ancient Mayan calendar also runs out in 2012, and the link is compelling evidence that the end may be nigh.
More than 20. This DIY superstore was reduced to rubble by a twister that flipped over cars parked outside.
We should be very wary of what will happen in 2012. Their calendar runs for over 5,000 years, and then it abruptly stops on December 21st in 2012.
This is two. Some of those who endured the onslaught said the winds sounded like an express train passing by.
Not good, guys.
Forecasters say these storms...
Our ancestors said that when the last days draw closer, many people will die and bad things will happen.
March to early July.
Let's get ready.
The earthquake lasts for 6 minutes. It's the most powerful recorded quake in Japan's history, the 4th most powerful ever. Its tremors are felt throughout the entire country, a distance of more than 1,500 miles north to south, and violent aftershocks follow in its wake.
We are still learning just how massive Friday's earthquake actually was. It was originally rated by Japanese government scientists as an 8.8 magnitude earthquake, but on Sunday, Japan's meteorological agency issued a correction. Turns out it was actually a 9.0 magnitude quake, making it the 4th largest earthquake in the world since the year 1900. Friday's earthquake off the coast of Japan was so powerful, we now know it actually moved Japan's coastline. It changed the balance of the planet. Because of the earthquake, according to scientists, Japan is wider than it was before, and the earthquake is believed to have shortened the entire day of the whole Earth by a couple millionths of a second. It tilted the Earth's axis slightly. As we discussed on Friday's show, Japan is one of the most disaster-prepared countries in the world. This is a country that celebrates, nationally observes Disaster Prevention Day every year. They have elaborate earthquake and tsunami early warning systems, comprehensive public and private evacuation plans, and super strict building codes. But it was not enough. Friday's earthquake and the tsunami that followed it were devastating to Japan. Thousands of homes were destroyed in the earthquake, washed away by the tsunami. Hundreds of roads are damaged. There have been explosions now at 3 different reactors at a nuclear power plant in northern Japan. As the New York Times reported this weekend, at least 40% of Japan's 22,000-mile coastline is lined with concrete seawalls or other structures meant to protect against high waves, typhoons, and tsunamis. But they weren't enough. The tsunami washed right over the seawalls meant to protect a pair of nuclear power plants near the coast, including the one where subsequently those explosions have happened. A leading expert on designing nuclear power plants to withstand earthquakes told the New York Times that the seawalls at the Japanese plants probably could not handle tsunami waves of the height that struck them, and the plant's diesel generators were situated on low ground on the assumption that those seawalls were high enough to protect against any likely tsunami. As we plan for the worst-case scenario, are we underestimating what the worst-case scenario is?
And in Tokyo, several fires have broken out. The fire department says fires have been reported in several places, including
2:53 p.m. The largest recorded earthquake in Japan's history finally subsides, but the aftershocks continue. Thousands of buildings are damaged. In Tokyo, a ceiling collapses on a college graduation ceremony, killing 2 people and injuring 25.
Are you not glad I told us to get the out of here?
That's exactly where we
were.
That's
where we just were.
Just some people did. We need power tools. You wouldn't say everyone just stay here and die. Fall down. Okay, we have earthquake right now, and this is actually moving. Can you see the cracks moving? There's water. I don't know if water.
Now, alarming evidence is being uncovered around the world.
John, check this out. This is our target.
From gloomy German vaults.
This is the Western Codex.
And haunting jungle ruins to alpine peaks.
See them here? This whole cliff.
Oh my God. You can see where they're coming right out of the ice.
Are these the ominous signs that Armageddon could be upon us?
What if the Mayans are right? We would expect an absolutely spectacular catastrophe. It would affect every single person on every continent.
Did the Mayans record the 21st